You have no right to speak to my father. Stay away from him, you manipulative waitress. Do you really think I cannot see what you are doing? He is old and vulnerable, and you are circling him like everyone else. If I catch you near him again, you will. Not like what happens next. Alina stood motionless beside table 9, her fingers tightening around the edge of the tray, while every customer in Riverstone. Diener stared at her in silence. The old man Theodore Hale sat quietly staring at his untouched bowl of soup, his cloudy eyes fixed on nothing, yet carrying years of unspoken pain. Alina forced herself to breathe and answered softly, "I only serve him tea, sir. Nothing more." But Victor Hale let out a bitter laugh that echoed across the room. "Everyone knows how this game works. He said you earn trust, then you wait for inheritance." He threw several bills on the table, grabbed his father by the arm, and pulled him toward the exit, leaving behind whispered suspicion and a silence heavy enough to suffocate. But humiliation was only the surface of a much deeper storm. Theodore Hale had been visiting the diner every afternoon for nearly a year, always at the same hour, always ordering the same simple meal: vegetable soup, warm bread, herbal tea. He rarely spoke, yet his presence carried a quiet gravity that Alina could not ignore. She noticed how his hands trembled when lifting the spoon. She noticed the worn leather journal he carried everywhere. She noticed the way loneliness wrapped around him. Like a shadow, Alina understood that shadow because she carried one too. She had grown up without security, without protection, learning early that kindness was often mistaken for weakness. Still, she chose kindness anyway. She began helping Theodore. Without making it obvious, she cooled his tea before serving it. She adjusted his chair near the window. She listened when he spoke about a woman named Margaret, whose laughter once filled a mansion. Now, silent, every time he mentioned her name, his voice trembled, not from age, but from memory. What Alina never realized was that Theodore was not an ordinary retired man. He had once built an energy corporation from nothing, transforming a small engineering startup into a national powerhouse. His decisions had shaped markets. His leadership had commanded respect, yet inside his own home he had become invisible. Victor now controlled the company boardrooms and legal structures surrounding his father, like walls ensuring that every signature, every meeting, every visitor passed through him. Theodore had slowly been convinced that stepping aside was best, that age meant irrelevance, that silence was safer than resistance. Until the afternoon, Alina asked him a question no one else had dared to ask. "Are you afraid?" The old man looked at her sharply, not offended, but startled. "Afraid?" he repeated quietly. "Yes, child, I am afraid of being erased." Those words changed everything. After that day, he began staying longer at the diner, speaking more, openly questioning things he once accepted. One evening, as rain pounded against the windows and lightning split the sky, Theodore leaned forward, his eyes sharper than she had ever seen, and whispered, "My grandson is returning." Alina felt an unexpected chill. He continued, "When he walks through that door, truth will follow." The next afternoon, 3 black vehicles stopped outside. Riverstone diner men in dark suits stepped out, followed by a tall, composed young man with piercing eyes and calm authority. The air inside shifted instantly. Conversations died mid-sentence. Theodore slowly rose from his chair without assistance for the first time in months, and a faint smile crossed his face. "Welcome back, Adrian," he said. The young man nodded once, then glanced at Alina, then at the frightened expression on Victor's face, and finally at the leather briefcases carried by the lawyers behind him. In that single charged moment, Alina realized the insult thrown at her yesterday was insignificant compared to the storm about to unfold, because this was no family visit. This was a reckoning, carefully prepared, legally armed, and emotionally overdue, and she was standing directly in its path. The moment Adrian stepped fully inside Riverstone Diner, the atmosphere shifted from tension to something far more dangerous. Victor felt it first, not fear, but loss of control, which to a man like him felt exactly the same. The lawyers placed their briefcases on the nearest table without speaking, and the quiet click of metal locks. Opening sounded louder than thunder outside. Theodore remained standing, his posture straighter than it had been in years, as if strength had returned to him simply. By witnessing what was about to unfold, Adrian did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone. He simply said, "Grandfather, I am here to correct what should never have been allowed." Victor forced a laugh, pretending calm. "You have no authority here." He said, "This is a private family matter." Adrian turned his gaze slowly toward him. "Authority," he repeated softly. "I have more than you realize." He nodded once, and one of the lawyers removed a thick document, placing it before Theodore. Alina watched. From behind the counter, her heart pounding because she understood instinctively that this was no ordinary legal discussion. This was a shift of power, carefully timed and precisely executed. Adrian continued, "6 months ago, grandfather signed a confidential review clause triggered if medical coercion or executive manipulation was suspected." Victor's face strained of color. "That is absurd," he snapped, but his voice lacked certainty. The lawyer calmly slid forward. "Medical reports, financial transfers, internal board communications evidence that over the past 2 years, Theodore voting rights had been restricted through subtle legal traps disguised as protective measures." The silence inside the diner deepened until even the rain seemed to pause. "Theodore," finally spoke Victor, "I trusted you." Victor clenched his fists. "You were forgetting things. You were vulnerable. I was protecting the company, protecting or isolating." Adrian asked quietly, "Because these documents show systematic removal of independent advisors and redirection of dividends into private accounts." Alina saw something break inside Victor, not guilt, but exposure. He stepped backward as if the walls themselves were closing in. "You cannot prove intent," he said. Adrian gave a small nod. "We do not need to prove intent. We only need to prove pattern. And the pattern is undeniable." Another folder opened, containing video. Statements from former executives who had resigned under pressure, statements recorded weeks ago under Adrian's supervision. The plan had not begun yesterday. It had begun months before. Theodore looked at Alina unexpectedly, as if remembering something. "Child," he said softly, "do you still believe kindness is weakness?" Alina shook her head slowly. "No, sir." Theodore smiled faintly. "Good, because today kindness allowed truth to survive." Adrian stepped closer to his grandfather, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "The emergency board session has already been called," he said. "Proxy restoration activates at midnight." Victor voice rose, now desperate. "You would destroy your own father for control." Adrian's eyes hardened. "This is not about control. This is about restoring what was taken." The lawyers began gathering signatures. Witnesses inside the diner stunned into silence as history quietly rewrote itself before their eyes. Victor realized then that the confrontation yesterday had accelerated everything. His public humiliation of Alina had drawn attention. Adrian had received the report within hours because he had investigators monitoring irregularities tied to his grandfather's schedule. What Victor saw as intimidation had triggered oversight. By attempting to scare a waitress, he had exposed the very insecurity he tried to conceal. Sirens sounded faintly in the distance. Not police, but media vehicles alerted anonymously to a corporate emergency unfolding in a small roadside diner. Victor stared at Adrian, who informed them. Adrian did not answer because the answer was simple. Transparency had informed them. Theodore straightened fully now, voice steady. "I built that company from nothing," he said. "I will not watch it be hollowed from within." Victor's anger finally collapsed into something more fragile. Fear of irrelevance, fear of losing everything he had convinced himself he deserved. Alina stepped forward unexpectedly, her voice calm. "Mr. Hale, I never wanted involvement in your family affairs." Theodore looked at her with gratitude. "You were never involved, child. You were simply human, and sometimes that is enough." Adrian extended a sealed envelope toward Victor. "This contains the board resolution, effective immediately. You are suspended pending investigation." Victor's hands trembled as he refused to take it. Pride was all he had left, and pride kept his arms. At his sides, the lawyers placed the envelope on the table anyway. Outside, cameras flashed against the diner windows, casting brief bursts of light across shocked faces. Inside, Theodore turned to Alina. "There is one more matter," he said. He removed from his coat the worn leather journal she had seen for months and handed it to Adrian Reed, page 112. Adrian opened it slowly, his expression shifting as he scanned the words. Then he looked up at Alina with astonishment. "Grandfather, you transferred personal shares to a charitable trust." Theodore nodded yes. Established under her name, Alina stepped back. "What I do not understand?" Theodore spoke gently. "Months ago I realized wealth without purpose decays. I needed someone who valued people, not profit. You reminded me of that. The trust ensures employee welfare, scholarships, and medical funds, funded by a portion of my private shares. Administered independently, not controlled by family or board." Alina felt tears threaten, but she forced herself steady. "I am only a waitress," she whispered. "Exactly," Theodore replied, "and that is why you are worthy." Victor stared in disbelief. "You would give company influence to a stranger." "She is not influence," Adrian corrected. "She is conscience." The storm outside began to ease, rain softening as if mirroring the tension dissolving within the diner. Reporters rushed toward the entrance, but security held them briefly, allowing the family one final private moment. Theodore approached his son. Slowly, "Victor, I loved you enough to trust you," he said. "Do not mistake accountability for hatred." Victor's eyes filled not with tears, but with the realization that ambition had cost him more than position. It had cost him respect. Adrian signaled too. "The lawyers, it is done," he said softly. "At midnight, authority returns to its rightful structure." Theodore exhaled deeply, as if releasing years of quiet suffocation. Alina understood then that she had not been standing in the path of destruction. She had been standing in the doorway of restoration. The diner would return to normal tomorrow. Customers would gossip, headlines would explode, markets it would react. But beneath all of it, something far more important had shifted. An old man had reclaimed his voice. A grandson had chosen integrity over inheritance. A son had faced the consequences of control. And a waitress who offered simple kindness had unknowingly altered the course of an empire. As media lights flooded the windows, Theodore turned once more to Alina. "Thank you, child," he said. She shook her head gently. "No, sir. Thank you for proving that even power can still choose what is right." Adrian opened the diner door, allowing reporters to enter. Carefully controlled statements prepared. Facts ready, speculation anticipated. Victor walked out silently, surrounded by cameras, no longer commanding the narrative, but subject to it. Theodore remained inside a moment longer, breathing in the quiet that followed chaos. Alina returned to the counter, picking up the tray she had dropped the day before. Steady hands now, steady heart. The world outside might call it corporate drama or family betrayal, but she knew the truth. It was never about money. It was about dignity restored. As Theodore prepared to leave, he paused beside her. "One final thing," he said. "You once asked me if I was happy." He smiled gently. "Today, child, I am." And for the first time in years, the words were not a memory, they were present tense.